All right, so here I am again. All right. So back in Gen 1, you might remember how Gyarados was a dragon and a water type, the base Gyarados, before, they had Mega Evolutions in Gen 6, Gen 1. So fast forward to Gen 2, they changed Gyarados' type to a flying and a water type. But for the longest time, a lot of people were kind of convinced the only reason why that was because there were no dragon type moves. Therefore, why would Gyarados need to be a dragon? Well, fast forward a little bit later on, and I found out another reason why they changed it. Well, you come to find out, I think the reason why they made Gyarados a dragon and a water type to begin with was because the other water dragon types that they had gotten rid of and the ones that Lance had actually used, again, assuming that the trainer prototype data for Gen 1 is actually what we thought it was, then Lance never would have originally had a Gyarados, a Charizard, or an Aerodactyl, even though Gyarados, Charizard, and Aerodactyl can technically be dragons, but not pure dragons. They kind of come from like a different breed of dragons. They're not pure dragon types, but like Charizard's a salamander, still a reptile. Gyarados is like a sea serpent, again, kind of like a dragon. Aerodactyl hailed from the prehistoric times, and that's what had happened. And then, of course, Dragonite, he had 3 Dragonites. But why did he have 3 Dragonites over that? Well, he originally... His team in Gen 1 was originally had 5 Pokemon. There was actually 2 Pokemon that was cut. There was Beluga and Cryothin, which were water dragons. This would be the Pokemon that Skimper would evolve into. Then they turned it into Cruz in Gen 2's prototype before Totodile came in. And then fast forward to Gen 7 or Gen 8, and then all of a sudden we have Sobble. Sobble. And then that's what basically where our little water lizard came from. And they basically redid the whole thing. And Sobble went, and then, so basically it went from being a water lizard, which again, a water dragon type, but it wasn't really a pure dragon type. It just became something else. Very interesting indeed. So, but that is what happened though but let's think about it like this too. Some of the other Pokemon moves that were actually moved around, I actually found out that, yes, those beta moves actually were, in fact, all recycled into Gen 2, and then they add more signature moves for some of the Pokemon in Gen 2, like Sacred Fire, Aeroblast. I don't know if the legendary beasts get their own, though. Probably not. But a lot of the moves that they got were renamed into something else. Like, I think 10,000 Volts Jolts was actually supposed to be changed to Sparks, which was Pokemon Gen 2, the moves that they had. I know that Mega Flare was actually inspired by Mega Fire, was inspired by Bahamut's Final Fantasy attack. So they actually changed that to Dragon's Breath. And I don't know if it had the same power, and I think they might have, maybe it was a little bit more powerful than the original, but then they cut the power down, they gave it a paralyzing possible stat, because it's a powerful breath, got a knockout effect and all that. Not an instant kill, but I mean, like how strong it was. Dragons are supposed to be intimidating. You also had, what was it? Outrage, Gen 2. That's what also they added. I don't think Outrage was even supposed to be in Gen 1. There's no, even in the prototype data, I can't find anything that's related to it like that. But it's possible that there might have been some moves and their animations weren't there, but we just haven't found it yet. Or maybe it was, because what happens is, if my memory is correct, there was 165 moves in the original Gen 1 game. But then fast forward, there was actually supposed to be 237. Then later on, when Gen 2 was released, all those moves were in the game, plus 17 more, so 251. How many Pokemon were in Gen 2? 251, in the final version of Gen 2. How much stuff was cut, how much stuff was not, that's debatable. That's what we're still trying to figure out. But right now, if the answer isn't obvious, that was why Gyarados was changed from a dragon type to a water type, and that would also explain why Lance always used a dragon. He used a Gyarados because the Pokemon that he had previously, because again, his original team was Cryothin, Beluga. He used the Dratini, he used the Dragonair, and he used a a Dragonite. But what they did was fast forward to Gen 2, and they took out because in Gen 1, let's assume that he's a little bit younger, and this is what he has. So they took out Cryothin, and they took out Beluga. Mind you, Beluga evolves into Cryothin. So it's the middle stage evolution when it evolves from Skimper. Now, this is what I know. So one of those two Pokemon was replaced by Gyarados, Water Dragon, and then finally Aerodactyl. Now, Aerodactyl is not a flying dragon type, but I think it's a rock and flying type. I could be wrong. I have to double check. But here's where it gets interesting. When Gen 2 was released, what did we find out that Lance actually had? 3 Dragonites, a Gyarados, a Charizard, and all of a sudden, and his original Aerodactyl. So let's talk about Gyarados, Aerodactyl, and what was the other one? Charizard. Okay, so as I said before, Charizard is not a pure flying dragon, but originally it was supposed to be a dragon type. Again, Dragon 4, the beta Pokemon. But what they did was, when the Mega Stone Evolutions came out, Charizard was eventually, they gave Charizard. Charizard was one of the very first 2 Pokemon that had a Mega Stone evolution that also had 2 evolutions. So there was the X and Y version, and I believe Mewtwo's the other one, X and Y Mewtwo. Don't know why. Not really sure outside of maybe Dragon Ball Z Frieza when he went Super Saiyan and all the different times where, like, I don't know why Mewtwo had like 2 Mega Stones. I know Charizard, I can probably see where they got the idea. They wanted to make Charizard a dragon type. That's where they wanted to bring that back so badly, and it worked in this case. So Charizard was then given like its own advantage because Charizard is a flying and a fire type. But then one of them is Charizard is a dragon and a fire type, if I got that right. But why was that, though? Because that's what they did with it. They turned Charizard into a flying and it was supposed to be Charizard should have been a dragon and a flying type, or fire and a dragon. But they decided that Charizard would be a fire and a fly. Makes sense. So fast forward to, again, there was a lot of stuff that was cut from the original release. There was also some stuff that took some time to go back to. But then, Gyarados got a Mega Stone evolution, and, Gyarados became its dragon and water type again. It got rid of its flying type when it evolves into, I believe that's how it works. It's a dragon. Was it a dark type? No. It was a water. No, it was a water. No, it was a water and a dragon type, right? If I remember correctly. Yeah. Something like that. Then you had, or something like that. So it's a water and a dragon type. So they brought back the pure stage of that. Aerodactyl, on the other hand, I checked its Mega Stone. It's still a rock and a flying type, even in its Mega Stone evolution. But they kind of made it look like a dragon. The king of the skies, is basically what they called Aerodactyl. A pterodactyl, basically. One that would always fly around and conquer from, the sky and carry the prey off to its nest somewhere on a little mountain cliff, somewhere where only it could get to, right? Kind of made sense. So you would think that that'd be a very, very powerful team for, something like Lance to use, even if he's not always, and then he's got his 3 Dragonites, which, you still want ice types for Dragonites, but either that or take it out by force or other dragons. But no, ice types will probably be an even better advantage, especially if you can get a special attack ice type, or like a Lapras, or and get stab bonuses and easily take out Dragonite, because Dragonite's more of like a physical attacker, and its special defense sucks compared, especially it's got that ×4 ice. So I think even with multi-scale, it really does. You really hit a Dragonite hard enough, and it'll just die instantly. But that's the thing about Pokemon games, though. That was always the idea, is like nothing really could counter dragons that much. But nowadays, you can use fairy types too. That they'll take those out very easily. But Lance is still one of the better trainers in the series. And the same thing goes with, Gyarados is a good Pokemon too. It's just a lot of lost history there though. Like a lot of people really never understood why Gyarados was a water type versus being a dragon and a water type. Personally, I think it's a good thing they brought it back in a way because it kind of makes sense. Gyarados is a dragon, so therefore it should have been a dragon type to some degree. It's just that they just took it out because they ran out of cartridge space and all that. And maybe at the time they were like, well, wait a minute, we make it a water and a dragon type because we don't have any other water and dragon types that we want to use predominantly. But they thought Gyarados was a cool Pokemon because the way it, especially when they redid it, originally looked like a sandworm at one point. So they redid it, and now Gyarados looks even better. I mean, not bad for a Pokemon that starts off weak as a Magikarp, and then once it evolves into a Gyarados, it's like one of the most useful Pokemon in the entire series. Especially if you know how to use it, Still keep it away from water, electric types, but, basically, if you're fighting a Gyarados in Gen 2 and all that, times 4 against, water type or electricity. So, yeah, it's going to be like one of the easiest ways to get rid of Gyarados easily. Especially if it uses Rain Dance and, Thunder conducts electricity. So, there you go. But yeah, that. Just figured I'd share that. A lot of people didn't know that. Why Gyarados was changed from a dragon type instead of a flying type. So now it's a water and a flying versus a dragon and a water type, which, very interesting though. So they just changed it probably because, not just because of the lack of dragon moves, but at the same time though, they just didn't have any other dragons at that time. The only ones in Gen 1 that we know of were were Dragonite. The 3 dragons, just like the ghost Pokemon. There weren't too many ghost Pokemon in Gen 1, but how many... But if what we are to believe is true, that there were a ton of Pokemon that were scrapped, but they had roughly like 300 Pokemon at that time, and if they were the Gen 2 Pokemon, plus the Pokemon that were supposed to be right around Gen 2's time, where, you had like the prototype for... there was a lot for Gen 2. I mean, there's a lot of Pokemon that they must have scrapped, and they had like different advantages and all that, but what they turned them into and how the series ended up becoming what it is now... I mean, it really does make you wonder, like, how many ideas they must have really went through at least, and how many other ideas they might have had that they could have been types, how many different moves were broken down. Because here's what's also really cool about the move sets a lot of people don't know. They're usually broken down into 4 sets. You have, like, the special attacks and the physical attacks, the stat effects moves, and then the moves that are signature, like, like Ho-Oh's Sacred Fire, Lugia's Aero Blast. Mewtwo used to have a move called Counter Strike, or Strike Back. No pun intended. That's where they got the ideas for like some of the movies and all that. And so they were based on ideas, but they just didn't utilize them in the final version. But they used them somehow. They had these ideas, but they just didn't use them in the final versions due to again, time restraints and that's what really sucks. Time deadlines are the only thing that really slow a video game down. You could technically think, like, as a game is being created, every game has like a list of ideas they probably didn't use, or they went back and did like a limited edition. I know, like, there are tons of games that even to this day that aren't translated. They'll make them, like, one of my favorites was like the Growlancer trilogy. They did the same thing with like every single one of these games almost. Like, they would make a game like 10 years ago, and then 25 years later, they'll go back and re-release it. Same company, but it had even more content in it. But it was the same game, though, but it was like a remaster almost, or a remake, rather. But why was that, though? The same game, but with more content that wasn't in the original version. Because they went back and they added it after they had more time. It was like a 1.0 version, and then they carried it over to like the PlayStation Portable, for example. And then that's what had happened. So it's interesting how Pokemon's kind of done the same thing as a series. They release a bunch of stuff, and then later on they'll go back and make another game, and they'll add new stuff. They'll scrap new ideas. They'll reuse some stuff from like probably in the past that they probably kept on their records. It doesn't surprise me at all. Like Gyarados being a water and a dragon type. They took it away at one point, and then they gave it back somehow. Same thing with Charizard. But with Aerodactyl, not necessarily. So Aerodactyl's not really a... But I think Aerodactyl can learn dragon moves by TMs, maybe? I have to double check that one. But, don't know, like Dragon's Tail or something like that. A couple other ones. Anyways, I'll have to double check. But anyways, again, subscribe if you're not already. I'll find more stuff and talk about it. There's always something to talk about. But I just figured, this was something that I just kind of forgot about. And I was like, oh man, I should mention that if it wasn't already obvious. There's tons of stuff that we still could talk about. But I'll have to find that stuff first, though. Okay, just a heads up, if anybody's watching this video up until this point, when I said that Mega Evolution Gyarados was actually supposed to be a flying and a dragon type, or a dragon and a water type, I actually meant to say it was a water and a dark type, so that was kind of a bad part of my error. I just got so used to thinking about like it being a dragon and a water type instead of it being the dragon and a flying type that it was, or a water and a flying type that it was originally named to, so it's actually interesting to think about.